What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Spoken Truth podcast. We've just wrapped up, the coverage of the 2024 NBA Finals. Now we're looking ahead to next season. Chaz, what are some storylines? What are some intriguing storylines you have going into next season of the NBA? Um, what are you looking at? What are you paying attention to? What moves this offseason are you looking at that can vastly change the direction of the league next year, if any? What team are you looking at specifically that's like on your radar?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of teams that, in the last segment I mentioned, I think there's got to be between 5 to 10 teams going into next season that think that they have a chance to win the championship. You mentioned a team like the Bucks. They went into last season thinking that they were in that mix, and then we found out pretty quickly that the defense is not going to get it done. They end up firing their coach midway through the season, bring in Doc Rivers, and nothing really gets any better. Damian Lillard. Um, Obviously, I think he was traded like 2, 3 days before training camp, so that's a hard adjustment. And then he's coming in and playing in a new organization for the first time in his career. So I think we saw a lot of, um, we saw a lot of road bumps for a team like that. And I think in the second season, you tend to see those type of teams improve and have a legitimate shot to at least make a deep run in the playoffs. I think this year, um, going into the playoffs, they had absolutely no chance with Giannis being sidelined, going against the Pacers in that first round. But assuming that they can get back, be healthy going into next season, I think they'll probably be the best team to challenge the Celtics. Is that where you're at with the Bucks too going into next year? You think they're behind the
Yeah.
Celtics?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, I think that's probably going to be the consensus that there's probably a few teams in the Eastern Conference, but I think most people believe Boston and Milwaukee are 1, 2. I will also mention, Philadelphia, like you said, I think they only have like 2 or 3 guys that are under contract next season, so they're going to look a lot differently. We're assuming that Tobias Harris is not going to be there anymore, and they're going to try and fill in somebody on the wing. You mentioned going after Paul George. There sounds like they're going after Jimmy Butler as well. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that would like to play on a team like that alongside Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. That's a legitimate contender. I think the New York Knicks are a team that were kind of on the verge of making the conference finals run this year, but then the injuries finally caught up with them. If they can stay healthy, I think they should be in the mix. And then going out to the Western Conference, there's a ton of teams I like. The Timberwolves obviously were on the verge of what I thought making a run to the finals, and then they get tripped up by the Mavericks. I think they should be able to learn from that, come back next season, and maybe make another deep run. I think the Denver Nuggets, in my opinion, they should be considered the favorites to get to the finals out of the Western Conference, but there's no guarantee with that. And then one more team that I'll mention before swinging it over to you is the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is a team that I was on the bandwagon all season long. I thought they were a legitimate contender this season. And we talked about, does a team need to lose? Do they need to go through that failure before they make a run? And I kind of thought maybe this would be the one of the rare teams that are able to make that run to the finals before they, really have any significant losses in the playoffs. But they fall to the Mavericks in six in the second round. They took some lumps. I think they're going to learn from that. They just traded for Alex Caruso yesterday. So I think that's going to really bolster their defense. I think if they can add probably another big to play alongside Chet Holmgren, I think the Thunder are a team that can win it all next year. So those are,
Wow, do you?
yeah, I do. I would have, I think if we're talking about teams that can win it all next season, this is going to change obviously after the draft and free agency, but I would have the Celtics, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Thunder, and maybe the Bucks, but I don't know. But those probably 4 or 5 are the teams that I think should be atop the favorites going into next season, at least right now.
For me, I think definitely Denver needs to be up there. Um, Boston definitely is up there. I would slightly favor Denver right now more than I would favor Boston in a hypothetical situation, hypothetical finals right now. I will favor Denver.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not quite ready to throw Milwaukee in there.
Yeah,
Um,
I am either. I need to see what the
yeah,
offseason.
I need to see what the offseason looks like. I need to see how Dame and Giannis are ever continuing to mesh. Is Dame happy? I need to see a lot of things play out in the season in order for me to say, you know what, they look like a legit contending team here. Um, Dallas, I don't think Dallas is in that mix. I don't even think OKC is in that mix.
Really? Okay, that this is a
I
team
don't
that
think OKC is in that mix.
yeah, like I said, I mean they were the 1 seed this year, and I got them maybe in the top 4 or 5 going into next season. So what's your hold up with them?
Youth, I don't think they have the veteran presence that they need. Um, Maybe if that changes somewhat, you know, I mean, I know they just, but I don't think he makes a big. I mean, he obviously is a veteran presence, two-way player. But
Caruso?
yeah, but I also don't think that he's going to make that significant of a difference as far as leadership and impact that they need. They need a leadership and impact, veteran players on that roster, to mix with the younger guys that's on there. I don't think OKC is at that point yet where they have they have the tools, the makeup. They obviously have the player to win it all. I do think they'll go through some more growing pains. I don't think they're quite ready yet. I don't think they could beat a Denver Nuggets team. Um, I don't think they could beat a Timberwolves team. I think the Timberwolves are right up there as far as contending teams. And Edwards have to play better. He has to obviously. I think he improved significantly over the offseason. So right now, honestly, I will have to say 4 teams. I will have to say the Timberwolves. I'll have to say Denver, yeah,
6.
Boston, Philly,
Okay.
maybe Philly.
See, I'm kind of right there with you as well, but the roster is so depleted. It's
Right.
basically Maxey and Embiid, and then you're trusting that they can figure out around them. So
Yeah.
I think, come October, I'll be with the 76ers. I think they'll be in the group, but it's hard for me to say that right now when they have nobody under contract besides their top two. So
Yeah.
assuming that they can get somebody to fill in those slots, they can get a third high level player to come in and be even better than Tobias Harris, which I do think they will do that. We just don't know who it's going to be yet. But
If they get if if they get Paul George, do they become the best team in the Eastern Conference, the favorites?
I think they're even with the Celtics at that point. Yeah.
See, I don't think they become even. I think they become better than the Celtics.
Okay. I'm not
I
mad at.
think
I think talent wise, you might be right, but I think the Celtics playing together and being there before might be the difference. Let's say if they do match up in the playoffs, but
uh,
talent wise, I think they're equal.
I think the only thing that will stop the Sixers is like togetherness, camaraderie. Like they haven't played enough together with those three that will potentially stop them from beating a team like Boston. I think they talent from talent. Obviously, I think Joel Embiid is the best player out of that bunch, combining both teams. And then maybe you go Brown, and then maybe you go George. Is Paul George better than Jason Tatum or
No,
Brown?
I think Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum are better than Paul George at this point.
Okay. A
I,
healthy Paul George?
Yeah, I'm high on Paul George. I think he's a top 15 to 20 player in the league. I think he's right there. But if we're ranking their top players, I'd probably go Embiid, Tatum, Brown, George, Maxey.
Okay. Okay, so they got three of the top five players.
Yeah, so I mean, at that point, I think you would have a good shot. But I think there were reports I saw yesterday that says that the interest that the 76ers have in Paul George has been kind of decreasing lately. So, obviously we're talking hypotheticals here. If they do end up with Paul George, I think they're at that point where they can compete with the Celtics. I kind of doubt that they end up getting Paul George, so I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see where he lands.
Yeah.
Orlando. We hear Orlando talking with Paul George. We get to offer him the money. Paul
Yeah.
George, he has the ability to sign anywhere he wants to. Sign a trade to teams that he can't really go to.
Yeah.
And so what does Golden State do? What does the Lakers do?
Yeah.
You still have these. Yeah, you still have these superstars. The team is not quite good enough to
Mhm.
compete with those other teams. How do you fix the roster? Um, you know, the Lakers again, they just signed JJ Redick. One's in their first choice, but he was one of their choices. You got an unexperienced head coach, but he gets along with LeBron. See if they can make that work. But I don't think there's a move that the Lakers can make that will put them in that window. And I'm kind of almost there with the Warriors too. What can the Warriors do unless they somehow get better for Clay? Do you let Chris Paul go? They haven't decided on Chris Paul yet. That's a $30 million unload if you let him go. And then Clay Thompson, if he walks, you could bring in another superstar, a max player. Who made that be? I don't know. Paul George. I don't know. There's so many things that could go on this season, this off season. But Paul George is obviously the biggest fish out there as far as free agency. Um, Denver, I think Denver needs to improve a little bit on the bench, slightly. I think they're a little thin there. I think their starting five is phenomenal. They don't need to do anything with that. The Timberwolves, I just think it takes more experience. It takes them going through something like this in order for them, I'm the Timberwolves is the one team in the Western Conference, other than OKC, that I don't think they need to do anything to their roster. I don't think the Timberwolves need to do a single thing. Bring everybody back as is, and just let that team continue to grow and build together. Um, OKC is the same, but I do think OKC needs a little veteran leadership. The only reason I would say the Timberwolves get that pass and OKC don't because Karl Anthony Towns been in the league for a couple of years, and he's experienced some failures in the playoffs. Obviously they haven't got to the point of where they just got this past season, but they've been to the playoffs, and so I do think. I do think with Karl Anthony Towns, his experience with Edwards, what he just went through, I do think they get that pass as far as having, lack of leadership, but they also have Mike Conley. So, I
That's
mean,
exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, I mean, they are kind of similar to the Thunder, where it seems like they're kind of at the front end of whatever this team is going to be over the next several years. But the
Mhm.
Timberwolves have guys that have done it before, even if they haven't won championships. Guys like Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, Curry, Anthony Towns, they've been in the playoffs before. The Thunder really don't have any of those guys. So I think that's a great point. But I thought you made another nice point about the teams that we feel good about going into the next season are teams that we already know what they're going to bring. You
Yeah,
know, with the Thunder, the Timberwolves, alongside the Celtics and the Nuggets, we know exactly what those four teams are going to look like next season because we saw it this past season. And even if other teams are able to improve around them, I think those teams will stay as contenders going into the next season. I will say one thing about the Thunder. I think if this team had Crusoe in that Maverick series, I think they win that series. I think adding a guy like that, even though he's not the veteran presence that, we're talking about, they probably need to still add. He is a very, very high level defender, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. And you also have him playing next to Lou Dort now, who is another one of those type of guys. So, I mean, one of the reasons they weren't able to win in that Maverick series is they weren't able to get enough stops down the stretch. And you add a guy like Caruso now where he can guard one of the other team's two best players, and Lou Dort is also guarding the other team's, one of their two best players. And now Shea Gilgeous-Alexander isn't guarding the other team's best guard because Caruso can take that job. So now SGA can fall back and maybe focus a little more on the offensive end. I think it just takes a lot of pressure off other guys. And then another point is that Josh Giddey was getting targeted. He was getting hunted a lot in that series. He's not a very good defender. You replace him with a guy like Caruso, and then on the other end, Josh Giddey, I think, is a superior offensive player than Caruso because he's able to play make, which Caruso doesn't really do much of. But Giddey's not a good spot up shooter. So a lot of teams were sagging off of him. They were putting two guys to SGA, and they were forcing Giddey to try and beat them. And Giddey couldn't do that in that series. Caruso is a high level 3-point shooter on catch and shoot. He's not going to be a guy that puts on the floor and isn't much of a playmaker, but he's able to knock down shots. And then on the opposite end, he's able to get stops. Giddey wasn't able to do either of those things in that Maverick series. So I think adding a guy like Caruso, to me, I would have the Nuggets atop the Western Conference, followed by the Thunder and Timberwolves in any order. I'd probably lean Thunder, but I could see the argument either way. And then in the Eastern Conference, I think it's the Celtics and then a whole bunch of question marks. I think those next three teams are probably Bucks, Knicks, and Sixers in any order, but we're gonna have to see what they do throughout the offseason to improve because there's a lot of question marks.
Every team, everybody's healthy next season. Who wins the championship? Early prediction. If every team is healthy, no moves is made. No moves is made. If every team is healthy, presently constructed, who wins the championship?
I want to say the Thunder, but I think I'm gonna go probably Nuggets over Celtics.
Nuggets over Celtics.
I think that's where I would be right now. All this season, we kind of felt like those were going to be the two teams that matched up. The Mavericks kind of crashed the party. The Timberwolves obviously were able to eliminate the Nuggets in that game 7 in the second round. So we didn't end up seeing that matchup. But I do think those were the two best teams throughout this season. So I could see it happening again next season. But like I said, the Thunder, they were the 1 seed this year, second best record in the entire league. And I think they already got better. So I think the Thunder are probably the next team up for me.
I might surprise you with who I say, but I'm gonna go Milwaukee. I'm gonna
Oh,
go to Bucks. I'm gonna go to Bucks.
okay.
I think
Let's hear
I
the
think
case.
obviously I think obviously Giannis at his apex could make argument as the best player in the world.
Yeah.
I think Dame at his apex with the shooting ability that he can play with. I mean, there's no lead safe. Chris Middleton is still on that team, who is an amazing mid-range shooter. He's an amazing player. You cannot dismiss that team, coach under Doc Rivers. I think with the players that they have, you can make it work. You still got Bobby Portis, you still have a ton of, Brook Lopez, you still have players that you contribute obviously on your bench and in your starting lineup. For me, it becomes this. In a hypothetical matchup between Boston healthy and Milwaukee healthy, I think Milwaukee takes Boston.
I think so.
Both sides healthy, both sides equal. I think Giannis, because of Giannis himself, he's going to be able to dominate in ways that the Boston Celtics just cannot guard. And so, in doing so, I think Boston will struggle being able to defend Milwaukee, and that's why I will slightly give Milwaukee the advantage. Same thing with Embiid. If Embiid can stay healthy, if Embiid can stay healthy, and the Sixers could be a healthy team, I'm not so sure Boston is not the third best team in the Eastern Conference. I'm not so sure. I won't go that far. I would say they're second at best. First, really first, but depending on what Milwaukee do, you have to say they're first now because they're the champions. But I'm talking about healthy teams, like best of seven. I don't know. I mean, we seen Philly almost beat them in game 7 with a hobbled, injured Embiid. I don't. It's just me. Like healthy team, they're all healthy. I will favor both of them over the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that take. I think I would lean Celtics because um, they're the team that we know what to expect. The 76ers are so unknown. And then I think we have kind of a sense of what Milwaukee's going to look like next year. And I think we assume that they're going to be improved because they'll be playing together a second year. But that team is just so old that it's hard for me to trust that. Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Damian Lillard, all those guys are on the back end of their career. So it's hard to kind of trust that, especially playing throughout an entire season. But you can say that about the Celtics as well with a guy like Al Horford. So I think those three teams to me, and then probably the Knicks fourth, are the teams that I'm expecting to be atop the Eastern Conference. But it seems like every year, especially in recent years, we see a team crash the party. So I'm kind of waiting throughout the offseason to see who makes that move and who is able to go from, being probably in the play-in to being a top 4 seed. You mentioned a team like the Magic, who were the 5 seed this year. If they can add, a couple guys to play along with their young core, I think that could be a team that ends up being a top 4 seed. We saw a team like the Pacers, they make a run to the conference finals. They re-signed Pascal Siakam this week. If Halliburton gets healthy, they add one more player. I could see a team like the Pacers also being, one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the conference. So, like I said, I can't wait for next season. We just finished up the finals, but we're already looking ahead to next year, and there's I think close to 10 teams that feel like they have a legitimate shot.